Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company here on the 440 Sports Network. Boy, it is a hot take Friday. We are very, very excited about today's program. Again, when it comes to the 440 Sports Network, we want everybody to like and subscribe. We want everybody for the Stillman and Company YouTube page at Stillman and Co. to like and subscribe. We've been getting more subscribers every day. So I guess you guys are telling your friends to like and subscribe. And I guess your friends are following through because they are liking and subscribing. So keep telling your friends, keep getting those numbers up, and on our way we go. Again, of course, we are uploading the podcast as soon as the show is over. It's usually up by about 3:30, 3:45 every day. We want to keep that consistent for your ride home. So be excited about that if you listen in podcast form and not just here on YouTube. But it's time to start on a Hot Take Friday. It is time to get going. It is the Titans and the Colts on Sunday. And this, when I was a kid, used to be such a massively big rivalry. On one hand, there was Indianapolis with Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne and Edgerrin James and later Tony Dungy. And on the other side, Jeff Fisher, Steve McNair, Eddie George, Javon Curse, Derek Mason, etc. They met in the playoffs before they were even in the AFC South. At this point in time, Tennessee was in the AFC Central. Indianapolis was in the AFC East. Don't ask me. That's just how they did it. And they met in the playoffs, and Tennessee went on the road to the then RCA Dome and won. And that was the beginning of the rivalry. Then they formed the AFC South in 2002, and the Titans swept Indianapolis, who would make the playoffs, but the Titans would win the division. And then in 2003, Indianapolis won the division. Peyton Manning and Steve McNair shared league MVP honors, and it was kind of a rivalry ever since, even though, for the most part, Indianapolis has had the upper hand. Now, there were a couple of years in there after Andrew Luck retired where the Titans absolutely dominated the Colts, but those days are over. The Titans have lost 4 straight to the Indianapolis Colts, and this goes all the way back. The last time they beat the Colts was 2022. Ryan Tannehill started against Matt Ryan. That's how long ago it was that the Titans beat the Colts. The Titans have lost to Anthony Richardson. The Titans have lost to Gardner Minshew. The Titans have lost to Joe Flacco. And on Sunday, they will take on Daniel Jones. And that is where we are starting today's program here on the Hot Take Friday. With this hot take, I want to get off my chest to begin the program. I'm taking the Titans to win on Sunday. That's right. Jared Stillman, me, who has poo-pooed everything the Titans have done since really January. I'm taking the Titans to win on Sunday. I did not like the decision when they fired Rand Carthon to elevate Chad Brinker. I did not like the decision to draft Cam Ward. And I have not picked the Titans through really anything. I didn't pick them against Denver. I didn't pick them against the Rams. In fact, I guaranteed, want to know, by the way, on the guarantees, I guaranteed the Rams would win last Sunday. I'm not guaranteeing anything this week, but I think the Titans are going to win. And I'm going to tell you why. I can't exactly tell you that it's a matchup reason or that it is a football reason, as in between the white lines, that is going to propel the Titans to victory on Sunday. I can't tell you that. Just call it a feeling. I just don't think the Titans are going to allow another season to be nuked this quickly. And when I say the Titans, I'm not talking about Brinker or Borgonzi or even Callahan. Certainly not talking about Amy. But I'm talking about the players. I don't think they're going to let this season melt down as badly as last season melted down, as quickly as last season melted down. When Mike Vrabel was the coach in 2023, that team sucked. Andre Dillard and Jalen Duncan and Aaron Brewer. And yet prior to Ryan Tannehill getting hurt in London against the Ravens, They didn't really throw in the towel. In fact, you can argue they didn't throw in the towel after that because they beat the crap out of Atlanta coming off of the bye with Will Levis at quarterback. They bowed up at home. They beat the Chargers. They blew the first game against New Orleans. They came back, they bowed up, and they beat the Chargers. Then they got embarrassed at Cleveland. They bowed up, and they beat Joe Burrow and the Bengals at home and just beat the crap out of them. Again, they beat the Falcons at home with Levis at quarterback. They just bowed up. Even the last game of the year, Jacksonville win and they're in. Titans nothing to play for. Derrick Henry last game at Nissan Stadium, a lot of pride on the table. They bowed up. It wasn't as if they were better than Jacksonville in 2023. It wasn't as if they were better than the Bengals. But they just showed up those days. Last season, the Titans didn't really show up at all. They beat a crappy New England team that, if it wasn't for a Joe Milton victory, would have been picking number 1 overall instead of you and would have deserved it. They beat a crappy Miami team who was playing their third-string quarterback, and they won kind of a fluky game on the road at Houston. That was it. There weren't any victories last season where, hey, they bowed up. They went to they showed up. They were refusing to lose. So maybe I shouldn't expect a Brian Callahan coach team to show up ready to go on Sunday against Indianapolis. A team that on paper, Indianapolis is better than the Titans. But I'm picking the Titans because of the players. I'm picking the Titans more so because of the players than I am the coach. And week 3 is a game to circle. Because if you remember last season, week 3 against Green Bay at home, Malik Willis at quarterback, that was the line of demarcation that this team last year was complete and total garbage and that this season was absolutely lost. I just don't think that this team, the 2025 Titans, granted, I think they know they're not very good. I know they're not very good. I think you know they're not very good. But I just can't see this team bending over and taking it in the rear for the entire season like they did last year. Last year's team was a group that I feel like was surprised to see how crappy they were because they were told all offseason how good they were by everybody in town and by their coaches and their general manager and their owner and what I dubbed the offseason of toxic positivity, where every dump was a positive. Great job, buddy. Did you have corn yesterday? This year, there is no overinflated sense of self. And the core of the team is really similar to last year. Because outside of Cam Ward and Alec Iomanner and Dan Moore, it's basically the same guys. And if you wanted any proof of that, last week when John Ojukwu got the start at right tackle, that told you all you needed to know. But because of that, because it's the same group of guys that were just flat out embarrassed last year, Simmons, Pollard, Ridley, Snead, because it was the same group of guys, throw in Cam Ward, who I do think has a lot of pride and a lot of I'm going to show you inside of them. I just feel certain this team is not going to be ready to pack it in after week 3. And then there's Indianapolis. I have become way more invested in my Sunday ticket package this season. And it's not because I'm doing Mad Dog Radio, and so I need to have national NFL takes, and I'm not doing 4 hours of Titans every day. I'm doing just an hour of Titans every day, so I don't need to be as Titan-centric. I can kind of do whatever I want. I don't have to be exactly Titan-centric, so maybe I'll be more national, and I'll watch more Sunday Ticket. That's not why. And it's also not because for the last 2 years I've been paying for it. Since I was in high school, my parents that have DirecTV, they have paid for Sunday Ticket, and I've used their Sunday Ticket. Well, now, because the last 2 years, Sunday Ticket's been on YouTube TV, I have YouTube TV, so I'm the one who pays for Sunday Ticket, and my parents leech off of me. I say my parents, my dad. My mom is not watching Sunday Ticket. But that's not why I'm more invested in Sunday Ticket. I'm actually kind of embarrassed to say this. The reason I'm more invested in my Sunday Ticket package this year is because, well, I've kind of gotten into fantasy football. After years of thinking I was better than fantasy football and always saying thanks, but no thanks when somebody would ask me to join a league, or basically just kind of covering my ears whenever anybody would talk about their fantasy team, I'd put my hand up, la, 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 I do not care about who you start at quarterback this week. I have been drug into the fantasy realm. Why? Because last year, Lindsay joined one of her girlfriend's fantasy football leagues, and she thought it would make her and I closer. So maybe she felt like she'd learn a little bit more about football or so. So she joins this fantasy football league, and I'm like, oh, God, fantasy football. I hate fantasy football. Fantasy football. And by the end of the year last year, it was like, all right, we need to start him this week, Lindsay. And so now I'm all in. So after years of thinking I was better than fantasy football, I now see these CBS game breaks where they send it to my buddy Adam Shine in New York. And he's like, and there was a big touchdown for Emeka Ibuka in week 1. And I'm thinking, oh, no, I got him on the bench. Oh, shit. Why'd I put him on the bench? It was kind of one of those very revealing, you ain't better than anybody else. You're not above anybody else moments in my life. So the reason I share that story about me in fantasy football is because I have watched the Colts in the first 2 weeks. After all, we have Jonathan Taylor on our fantasy team. Also had Will Lutz on the fantasy team, the kicker for the Broncos. And when he missed that kick at the end of the game, I was doubly pissed. And I have been impressed with Indianapolis to an extent. But I haven't been that impressed. And the guy I'm not impressed with whatsoever throughout 3 years of running the Colts is Shane Steichen, the coach. And so I can see the Colts at 2-0, just fat and happy, smelling their own farts, thinking they're going to walk into Nissan Stadium and just screw the Titans without putting in the proper effort. I mean, we already got Zaire Franklin, I think it was, shit-talking Cam Ward during the week. Wow, Indy, you really have a bunch of Super Bowl rings to warrant talking all that shit. So I just don't take Shane Steichen seriously. And this is a game where if you are their coach, if you're Shane Steichen, you are scared to death because you know that your team knows that Tennessee stinks, and you know Tennessee is 0-2, and they know Tennessee is 0-2, and they know they're 2-0, and they think they're good. Are they really all that good? They beat the Dolphins, and then they beat the Broncos at home because of a Will Lutz missed field goal and because I don't know what the hell Sean Payton and his special teams unit was doing at the end of the game on Sunday. It was not as if they beat the Denver Broncos 36-6. And that's what takes me back to Steichen. If this was a coach, if this was Mike Tomlin, for instance, a coach that, hey, you got to take him seriously, then I would think like, yeah, they're probably going to come in here and take care of business. But he's not Mike Tomlin. In fact, I don't think other than looking into his play sheet, covering his mouth, and I do think Steichen might be a good offensive coordinator. I don't watch the Colts to that extent to know the play calling and to say, okay, wow, this, that, or the other. But instead of putting his thing over his mouth and talking with the play sheet over it and dialing in the play, I don't think Shane Steichen's a very good coach. And I've talked about this when it comes to Anthony Richardson and that whole tap out from last year. I thought that was coaching malpractice. And I'm going to tell you why I think it was coaching malpractice. Richardson's the one who, I guess, takes the brunt of the anger when it came to, holy crap, that guy just tapped out of a game because he was tired. But you and I should not even know that happened. If Shane Steichen was a good coach, and this is why head coaching and coordinating are very different, and some guys like Andy Reid can do both, but again, it's very different. If Shane Steichen was a good head coach, obviously he's on the sideline and his starting quarterback comes out of the game and the backup goes in, and the head coach is sitting over there saying, why is the starting quarterback out of the game? And at some point, somebody's going to tell him. So when Richardson or whoever comes back to Steichen and they say, hey, I just needed a blow because I just ran down the field 45 yards and so I needed a playoff, Steichen at that point should have immediately turned to Richardson and said, go in the blue tent. Go in the blue tent, count to 20, and come out. But, Coach, I was just get your ass to the blue tent. And then you tell Anthony Richardson right then and there, hey, if anybody asks, you twisted your ankle. You got it? Because then after the game, the media is not even going to ask why he tapped out, because the CBS sideline reporter is going to say he's questionable to return with an ankle, but it looks like he's already got his helmet on and he's going to go back in the game. Instead, that moron coach let his then franchise quarterback, which is what they considered Richardson at that time, the way you consider Cam Ward your franchise quarterback, they let him go to the podium and say, yeah, I was tired. And then that has been the story of this man's career so far. That's bad head coaching. A head coach is supposed to manage the situation so that doesn't happen. Like, that's what head coaching is. And I don't think Steichen's a very good head coach. And again, that's kind of the key to why I'm picking the Titans to win on Sunday, because I don't think Shane Steichen understands how difficult it's going to be to get this team up to play this game, because they think the Titans suck so bad and they think they're so good, and that is exactly what gets you beat in the NFL. I remember Mike Mularkey's first year as the head coach of the Titans when they became competitive at the end of the season. They played Denver, the defending Super Bowl champions, with a great defense at home, and they played Kansas City on the road. And Kansas City, I think at that time, was the number 2 team in the AFC, or the number 1 team in the AFC. And Mike Mularkey went to the podium those 2 weeks before Denver and Kansas City, and he was basically talking about how, hey, we're not intimidated of anybody. We can play with anybody in this league. We know if we follow the game plan, we can compete, so on and so forth. The next week, they played crap-ass Jacksonville. And Jacksonville had just fired their head coach the week before. And you could sense the fear in Mularkey's voice that whole week talking about how good Jacksonville was. Because he knew, if I don't get these boys ready to play, we're going to go down there and get our butts beat. And that's exactly what happened. And that was a coach who knew what he was doing, who was trying to keep that from happening. I don't see Shane Steichen as that kind of coach. So because of that, I'm picking the Titans. This league is designed for every team to be 9-8 or 8-9. Now, we all know teams with elite franchise quarterbacks like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson don't go 9-8. But Daniel Jones, who I actually kind of like, and I lobbied for the Titans to try and sign once it was apparent they weren't going to pay Sam Darnold, is not Josh Allen, and he is not Lamar Jackson. I actually like Daniel Jones, and I like Daniel Jones really for one reason. I mean, again, I wouldn't make him my franchise quarterback or anything like that. And I certainly don't like him like I like Sam Darnold, who I think has way more talent than Daniel Jones. But when they came in here at the start of the 22 season, if you remember, the Titans played the Giants. The Giants were very good. The Titans were up 13-0 at halftime. And I guess Mike Vrabel let everybody have a Marlboro Light because they took a freaking smoke break to start the second half. Saquon runs one into the end zone for a touchdown. Sterling Shepard, whatever, he caught a big touchdown pass from Daniel Jones because whoever the corner was at the time, I think it was Christian Fulton, had his head up his ass. And so all of a sudden it's 14-13, and then Tannehill leads a drive, and they set up Randy Bullock, and he misses the kick. And I just remember going to that game. And I remember watching how tough they scored a touchdown in the second half, and they went for 2 and got it. And I just remember watching that game thinking, man, that Daniel Jones is a tough son of a bitch. He's not a great quarterback, but he is a tough son of a bitch. And they ended up having a nice season. And so I've always respected Daniel Jones. And I've always figured that the Daniel Jones sucks was more of a Giants thing necessarily than it was simply a Daniel Jones thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. But Daniel Jones is not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Justin Herbert. He's not even Baker Mayfield. So I expect the Colts to walk into Nissan Stadium, and I expect the Colts to take this game for granted, and I expect the Titans, who lived through last year, to give us this, we're not going to go down without a fight. We're going to try to save our season effort. I expect the Titans, who this time last year at 0-2 were saying things like, nobody runs the ball in the Tennessee Titans, to have the humility that everybody in that locker room knows if we don't show up this week, it's 0-3 and the season is over, and we're not going to let that happen. And I expect the Colts to show up with this, we're a good football team, so we're going to win this week because we're all of a sudden good type of entitlement. And I think that equals a Titans win. Maybe in April, we will bemoan the fact that the Titans won this game if they're picking 6th instead of 2nd. I don't know. But for right now, all I can do is just call it like I see it. It's like when I had a child and I told Caroline, I said, I've gone from worrying about what might happen to worrying about what is going to happen. All I can really worry about is what's happening right now. This Sunday, I'm calling it like I see it. I'm taking the Titans to win against the Colts. I don't know how they'll do it. I think it'll be funky, kind of like that Houston game last year where you won even though you threw a pick 6. Chiga Okonkwo had a big play for a touchdown. Kayemi Fairbairn, who's a very good kicker, missed a chip shot. I think it'll be like that. Titans win on Sunday. They go to 1-2. Now, the second thing here on Hot Take Friday that I think kind of piggybacks off of I think the Titans are going to win. So I think Postgame Live is going to be talking about a win. I think on Monday, Titans Monday, people are going to be so excited. They're going to give all the credit to Cam Ward. But if they do not win this game on Sunday, I think Brian Callahan is done. I think if they lose on Sunday, especially if it's embarrassing fashion, it's over. And I would say put him on coaching red alert. Now, I'm not saying fire the coach. Like, I'm not saying I would fire him. I don't know. I haven't been there yet. And I'm not saying Amy will for sure fire him right then and there. But she might. Here's why he's done for if they lose the game on Sunday. At 0-3, the season is over. This team at 0-3, who had the president of football operations giggling when asked if they could compete for the Super Bowl, they know it will be a pack-in job by those players. It'll be the fastest Cancun season you've ever seen. They'll be talking about Cabo before they even put up Halloween decorations. And the one thing I know is not going to happen, as much as you guys talk about this, because I know Amy, and I know she's a wild card, but I also know she is not going to give Mike Vrabel this satisfaction, is she is not going to fire Brian Callahan after the Mike Vrabel game. Because there is nothing that Mike Vrabel would enjoy more than them firing Brian Callahan at the expense of losing to him. You know what's funny is with Robinson and Amy, and I haven't talked to the Titans about this a lot. And really, I know we had Robinson on the show yesterday, but I didn't really talk to Robinson about this. I really haven't. I mean, look, I'm sure that they're not in love with each other anymore because, they did fire him. But I never got this sense of hate between the Titans and Jon Robinson. I didn't get that sense from the Titans, and I didn't get that sense from J-Rob. With Vrabel, there was a lot of petty bullshit that led to him getting fired. If Vrabel carried himself the way Brian Callahan does with the owner, Vrabel would have stayed on after that 2023 season. Now, if they had been as bad as they were last year, or they had had a repeat of 2023, Vrabel would have been fired. But I think if Vrabel had just had a little bit of humility and had respected the owner, which Vrabel was not doing by the end of his tenure here, Vrabel, I think, would have stayed on for 2023. So the last thing in the world she's going to do is give him the satisfaction of being the guy who finishes off the guy who was hired to replace him. So that's the one thing I know is not going to happen, which means she might fire him before that. And if Callahan's going to get the boot during the season, even though it really doesn't make a difference if you fire him week 3, week 6, week whatever, she is not going to let that happen and that speculation happen and everything else going into the Vrabel game. But here's what the discussion will be if they fire Callahan, which, again, I think will happen at some point, whether it is after Sunday if they lose, or whether it is after the bye week or whenever. What they will say is, we need to see if somebody else can get the best out of Cam, like a Mike McCoy. Because right now, I think there's still a belief. I know there's a belief within the fan base. I don't know how strong the belief is within the fan base, but I do think that there is a belief that cutting your losses of Callahan would somehow hurt Cam. Now, I don't really buy that because I don't think Callahan's a very good coach, and so I don't think Callahan's really doing anything to help Cam. But there's this idea that, hey, if we fire Callahan, we're going to set Cam back, and we just can't do that. And I do listen to talk radio, even though I'm not on it anymore. And I do hear a lot of the callers, you know, kind of the old bumpkin callers are like, we need to give Callahan a chance. I mean, Callahan needs a chance. It's like I heard Willie Donegan, and I love Willie. But I heard Willie Donegan yesterday talking about, like, call in and tell me why you want Callahan fired. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know, Willie, because he sucks. Like, because he's done nothing right in 2 years. So right now there is this belief. I don't know how strong it is. I don't know how accurate it is. I don't know. There is a belief that if you fire Callahan, you're going to hurt Cam. But if they keep losing, that belief is going to go away. Because with Ken Wisenhunt in 2015, when Amy fired him after taking over as the controlling owner, the narrative or the feeling was, get this guy out of here before he ruins Marcus Mariota anymore. Get him out of here. He's already done enough damage. And if they lose on Sunday and Cam doesn't look good and the numbers aren't pretty, and then that's going to be the case with Callahan. They're going to say, well, I mean, Callahan's already screwed him up enough. Don't let Callahan screw him up anymore. So the win, I can't exactly tell you. Maybe it's a couple weeks after the Vrabel game. Maybe it's the bye week. Maybe it's next week, because they would go on the road to Houston. And if they go on the road to Houston and get embarrassed with Amy as a wild card, you know that's not going to go over very well. So I don't know when it's going to be. But I'm just going to tell you, if they lose this week, season's over. And if the season's over, they're going to start packing it in. And if they start packing it in, Callahan's going to get fired. Because one of the reasons to fire a coach in the middle of the season is if the coaches stop getting the team to play for him. Yep, them boys, they're just not playing for him anymore. And I don't think this team has stopped playing for Brian Callahan. I think the team played hard at Denver. I think the team played hard against the Rams. But the talent gap between Tennessee and Indy isn't so big that Indianapolis should just walk into Nissan Stadium fat and happy and walk out 3-0. And so if that does happen, then I think you'll start to see some heads go down and you'll start to see some business decisions being made. And it's going to look a lot like the end of last year, where you could see a football team that was clearly playing out the string. That'll get the coach fired. So I am picking the Titans to win. I am expecting the Titans to win. So I think Callahan will survive at least another week for sure, because once again, I am picking the Titans to win the game. But at the same time, if they don't, and they're 0-3, and they're 0-2 at home, and they're heading on the road to Houston, and Mike Vrabel is coming in town next month, Brian Callahan, whom the team considered firing after last year, I reported, and of course they will never admit to this, but I reported at the time that Chad Brinker did not want to keep Brian Callahan on as the coach, and Amy did. If they lose this week at 0-3, he's in some deep, deep shit. And again, it's hard to undo the damage without winning football games that he did to himself as a coach in that Denver game. So I'm picking the Titans. But if they don't win, oh my God. If they don't win, Brian Callahan is in trouble. If they lose on Sunday, not that this really makes a difference, because let's say that they do win. Again, it's not like I think they're going to win and all of a sudden they're going to reel off 9 in a row. This is not the 2002 Titans that started off 1-4 and finished the season 11-5. But if they do lose on Sunday, I've got a good realtor. His name is TJ Anderson, tjandersonhomes.com. TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Call him, because you coaches will probably need to be putting your houses up on the market. That is, unless Mike McCoy wins Amy over the way that Mike Mularkey did, which I don't think is probably going to happen. And then even then, he'll probably want his own coaches in here too. So this is a big one for Callahan. Last year, they lost to the Packers, and that was a wave the white flag on the season kind of moment. But you knew that, like, hey, maybe the coach will be able to survive this. We weren't even talking coach being able to survive this. Coach ain't surviving this if they start off 0-3. So there is something Cam Ward talked about in his press conference this week that I actually really, really liked. And it was actually the first thing that Cam Ward talked about this week. And again, all Cam Ward can do is answer the questions that he's asked. But man, I really liked what I heard out of Cam Ward. So this is what James Foster, who is our film guru, No Flags Films, this is what James Foster, that does the weekly film breakdown at Cam Ward, 440 Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. You'll see it every, I think it's Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is. I think the film breakdowns are great. I've watched both of them, and I have a real strong appreciation from it. This is what James Foster said on the 440 Sports film breakdown. And of course, he also co-hosts the Hot Read podcast with Braden on Thursdays. Here's what he said on the Cam film breakdown about Cam and the sacks. Take a look.
This game specifically, there was one recurring issue that I noticed. In most of these sacks I'm going to show, Ward has an open receiver who is, realistically within the progression. I think the best way to say it is when his internal clock goes off in his head, the response needs to be, okay, I have half a second left, or I have exactly 1 second left before I have to release the ball. I know where I'm at as far as route development. I've got this backside dig coming open. If I buy 0.3 seconds, I can release the ball, maybe take a hit, but it shouldn't disrupt the throw. What's happening with Ward right now is that when his internal clock goes off, it's telling him to scramble almost all the time, and he ends up abandoning the progression, breaking the pocket when he would have had a route coming open if he just held onto the ball for a quarter second more. So like this play right here, this is...
Okay, so by watching that, again, to summarize, if Cam just waits an extra second, instead of immediately panicking and just scrambling, which is what young quarterbacks do, if he just waits an extra second, Ridley, Io Manor, Lockett, one of those guys is coming open. And so Cam was asked by Terry McCormick at the beginning of his press conference this week about what he can do in order to help the team or help the offensive line with the 11 sacks they've allowed through the first 2 weeks. Here's what Cam Ward said.
What were some of the things you felt like you could do to maybe help the offensive line out when you were under duress?
I would say just continue to get through progressions faster, especially backside. Moving on from my first read pre-snap, and then just giving my guys a chance, because we won, especially Ellie and Red, they won a lot of the backside routes that I didn't get to, where I had to step up. And then just really getting better in the pocket, moving within the pocket, keeping a short stride, getting the ball out.
Isn't that exactly what James Foster said when he watched the film? Hey, this is the one thing about Cam with these sacks is that he's not looking at the backside guys. He sees it, it's not there. He panics a little bit. He starts to move. And Cam's saying, hey, I got to get through the progressions faster because Ridley's winning on the backside and Alec Iomaner's winning on the backside. And I heard Cam. So I watched the Foster breakdown. Then I heard Cam's press conference where Cam, and again, the first question he's asked, he basically highlights what James Foster said his biggest issue with Cam Ward was. I heard that and my pants started to fall off. And I don't even think I'm losing any weight around here. My pants just when I heard that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because again, that's just some basic generic press conference asking, how big is this week? What can you do on this? What can you, we just got to go out there and we got to play our game and we just got to blah, blah, blah. And instead, when asked, hey, what can you do with the sacks? Cam has an answer. And the answer matches up with what the film guy on this network says is the issue. And I think that's great. In order to get better at something, in order to fix something, you have to know how to fix it. And so how can somebody show that they can fix something other than by articulating what needs to be done? Cam Ward in a press conference cannot show us that he knows what he has to improve on because, again, he's not going to get out there and say, okay, this is not like the Fox Sunday pregame show where Terry Bradshaw and them get on the miniature field and Jimmy Johnson's directing traffic like, okay, Howie's going to go over here and then Michael's going to come down and stop him. This is going to open it up down the field for Terry to look down the field to hit Kurt Menefee with a touchdown pass. Like Cam's not going to get out there on the field and show him how to do it. So the only way that Cam can give us any sort of demonstration that he knows what the issue is and that he knows how he's going to fix the issue is to tell us exactly what the issue is. Again, Ridley's winning on the backside. Iomaner was winning on the backside, and I've got to get to them. How to do it? He said, I've got to step up in the pocket, which again aligns exactly with what James Foster took away from the film breakdown, which was Cam's got to give it an extra half a second. He can't just take off and run. In order to be able to fix something, you first have to know what it is that needs to be fixed. And when you can articulate to me that you know what needs to be fixed, it gives me hope that you know what you're doing, that you're actually going to be able to improve. It's like my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. When I call them out to my home, and they tell me that in order to cool my home office, for instance, I need to install a mini split. And their project manager explains exactly where it'll go and exactly what it'll do. It gives me the confidence that they know how to solve my HVAC problem. That's why I use them. In fact, before I even moved into my current house, and I built what was essentially a storage closet in the garage into a fully functional home office / gym. I didn't even know what a mini split was. But I'm not the expert. They are. When it comes to how is Cam Ward going to be a better football player, the answer is Cam Ward needs to be the one to know what it is he's got to fix. So when he says he needs to focus on the one thing that our film expert sees and says needs to be worked on, I get excited because it tells me once again, at least he knows. At least he knows the answer to the problem. Again, knowing the answer to the problem and being able to do it, that's another step. Is he going to be able to do it? I don't know. But if you don't know how to fix a problem, you're very unlikely to actually be able to do it. And so, again, I got excited when I heard that in the Cam press conference. And I do think it's kind of funny because when it comes to the things that Cam says or does, a lot of Titan fans get excited about the confidence stuff. You know, when Cam gets up there, he's like, I'm always confident. And Titans fans like, he's a dog. He's a winner. He's a franchise quarterback. I'm like, he's getting up there saying he's always confident. What the fuck's that mean? Big freaking deal. I doubt there was a single Titan fan that, again, is part of that, the original Let Ran Cookers. I doubt there is a single Titan fan out there who heard that answer from Cam about what he needs to do to help out the offensive line so that they don't give up all the sacks they've been giving, that got as excited about it as I did. But the difference is Cam's confidence or cockiness or whatever you want to call it, that's never been an issue for me. What's an issue for me is the fact that he's kind of hanging his offensive line out there to dry right now. Even though he's by far the best player on that offense, he's hanging the offensive line to dry by taking off and running into some sacks. PFF has even said, and they don't know the play calls, and this is one thing that does bother me with PFF, but even they've said, hey, some of these sacks are on Cam. I also love the fact that our film expert, when you listen to James Foster, and we had James Foster on last week, and we'll have him on again. I just love how monotone he is, how unemotional he is when he talks about this stuff. It's like, yeah, so on this play, the safety has to come inside and he's got to stare the other guy down. And instead he looks over here and it's so scientific, it feels like, as opposed to emotional or entertaining. You know, it feels like he's not trying to score points with the fan base like Dan Orlovsky, who's like, watch the tape. Cam is the next Hall of Fame quarterback. Just breaking down the film. There was one he did on a pass Chig dropped where, boy, I tell you, again, after Stillman and company is over, go watch the James Foster film breakdown on the 440 YouTube page, because it's 10 minutes and it's just fascinating. But there was one play against the Rams where Chig was supposed to sit against the zone, and Cam's reading both defenders and sees that there's kind of a defender on the left side of Chig, so he kind of moves the ball to the right. And Chig, in his fourth year, has to know that when he stops his route, that guy on Chig's left is going to come charging down. And so Cam knows the guy's going to charge down, so he puts the ball to the right a little bit, so Chig should make the adjustment, and of course Chig doesn't, because Chig sucks. And I don't think, again, we talk about articulating issues and needing to fix them. They asked Chig in his press conference during the offseason where he talked about all the vacations he was taking. They asked Chig about what he needs to do, and he's like, I just got to get more opportunities, and you need to learn how to fucking catch. That's what you need to do. Again, that's a guy who can't articulate what his problem is because he doesn't know. And so because he doesn't know what his problem is, he doesn't know that he needs to fix something. He certainly doesn't know how to fix it. And that's why Chig has never gotten 1 ounce better since he showed up as a rookie. Cam, meanwhile, sitting here telling you exactly what he's got to work on. I absolutely love it. Love it, love it, love it. And again, I think the people that are and I understand this because I felt this way about Mariota. I wanted Mariota to be the guy so badly. I wanted Mariota to be like Aaron Rodgers. I wanted Mariota to be like Tom Brady. I wanted Mariota to be like Drew Brees. I wanted it desperately. And I started to tell myself things that weren't true because I wanted it so badly. And I think there's a lot of you out there that do that with Cam. And so anytime Cam does something good, it's like, did you see that throw? It's like, yes, I saw that throw. Very impressive. Did you see some of the others? They can't even, it's got to be all positive all the time. They get so excited about things like, yeah, Cam says Restrepo's the best route runner in the draft. And I just shrug that off like, what does he know about that? Or they say things like, well, we got to keep Callahan because Cam likes Callahan. And I'm like, who cares? Who cares who Cam likes? He's the quarterback. He's not the coach. He's not the general manager. He doesn't know how to evaluate coaches. Gives a rat's ass what does Cam actually like him, or is he just being a good quarterback and a good soldier for his coach? Or who knows? But they eat that stuff up. I'm over here obsessed with him talking about, maybe I just need to get to my backside reads quicker. Maybe I need to step up in the pocket. Maybe I don't need to just run away once immediately I start to feel a little pressure. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Now, I want to talk about something that happened on yesterday's program. We were joined by the former general manager of the Tennessee Titans, Jon Robinson. And the reaction to J-Rob on the program was incredibly polarized. And I'm not surprised by this, but I at least just want to discuss it. So yesterday we had J-Rob on for about 25, 30 minutes, and the reaction was very strong in two separate directions. The first, and I think this was the majority opinion, was, I love this. I mean, people in the YouTube chat and making comments on the YouTube page saying, Jared, you've got to get Jon Robinson on every week. You've got to make him a weekly guest. Which is more so how I felt watching that or listening to Jon, because I do think Jon Robinson, even though he made mistakes as general manager, I do think Jon Robinson knows a lot about football. I think he's a very good general manager, as many of you know. The other response, and this was more of the Twitter response, and this is why Twitter is such a cesspool, but the YouTube chat response, for the most part, was a salute to J-Rob. This was a good interview, very insightful. I'm glad you guys talked about those things. The Twitter reaction, some of it was good, but a lot of it was, this guy sucks. This guy, he drafted Isaiah Wilson and Caleb Farley and Traylon Burks. He sucks. One guy, because Jon said good things about Cam. One guy said, I'd rather he say bad things about Cam. Here's what I can't get over. And I understand we all have differences of opinion. I have never once advocated for the Titans to rehire Jon Robinson after they fired him, though I thought it was comical how they fired him. And I thought it ruined that season, because I think they would have won the division. I think they would have won the Jacksonville game that week had they not fired him. I think they would have won the division, and who knows. But here's what I can't get over. Your team is absolute horse crap. Right now, last year, and the year before that. And that was all without Jon Robinson being the general manager. And it should be noted that it was never this bad under Jon Robinson. And we just forget about that because he missed on draft picks. They never had a losing season with him as the GM. Think about that. And it's not as if he was Omar Khan in Pittsburgh, who had worked under Kevin Colbert for 20 years, and Kevin Colbert retires after the draft, in which the Steelers, I think, made the playoffs. And he's like, hey, I've had 20 good years, won a couple Super Bowls. Now I'm turning it over to my right-hand man who's taking over, and he's going to work with Mike Tomlin, who's been here the whole time. No, Jon Robinson took over the worst team in the league. When he got the job, he had the number one pick. And that team is a lot like the team that they have right now. And they never had a losing season. They won 9 games their first year. They went from 3 wins to 9 wins. And you guys still want to get on here and bitch about Caleb Farley? Like, you just completely ignore absolutely everything else he did, which included, winning. And I told Jon Robinson this yesterday. I told him this off the air. And I have no problem saying this publicly. When I worked with Floyd, I got the sense, and I don't know if Floyd and I ever talked about this. I think we did. But I got the sense from Floyd that taking credit was beneath him. That the idea of walking around and telling everybody, I did that, was arrogant. That, again, it was beneath who he was. He was, I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to let the results do the talking, and I don't need to defend my decisions because it'll all play out on Sunday. And I envy that. Because I could never be that modest. I could never let some bozo-ass loser like Jeff Fisher take all the credit for all the shit I did? I mean, Jeff Fisher is on a Netflix documentary talking about how he scouted Steve McNair and how he evaluated Steve McNair and I'm just going to tell you right now, Jeff Fisher didn't do shit when it came to Steve McNair. But Floyd was never the guy who was ever going to get up there and say Jeff Fisher didn't do anything, or Jeff Fisher was a crappy coach, or he just figured, hey, everybody will see the results. Fisher goes to the Rams without Floyd. They're terrible. But I noticed in this town that because Floyd didn't toot his own horn, I think that's why they picked Fisher over him. And so I said to Jon, you and Floyd both have that mentality and that belief that, again, taking credit is beneath you. And I understand that you want to lead by example. But when you do that, it opens up space for everybody else to take credit that you deserve. The great Mike Vrabel got all the credit for all the success the Titans had. But without Jon Robinson as general manager, Mike Vrabel is 7-17 as a head coach. That includes the 5 games he lost after Robinson got fired. That includes the 6 games that he won the next season and the 1-1 start in New England. And I don't think that New England team is very good. But everybody just thinks the great Mike Vrabel is the reason why the Tennessee Titans won all those games. Maybe Jon Robinson should spend more time talking about the fact that, hey, he won 9 games in the 2 seasons in which he didn't have Mike Vrabel as his coach. Mike Vrabel had nothing to do with the drafting of Jack Conklin or Derrick Henry or Kevin Byard or Jayon Brown. He didn't have anything to do with the trade for Dennis Kelly. He didn't have anything to do with that. He wasn't even here. They traded a 4th-round pick for Ryan Tannehill. They got a Pro Bowl quarterback for a 4th-round pick. Again, we just give no credit. What did Robinson talk about when I talked about, hey, when you took over the 2016 team and it was this bad and you wanted to, he talked about, in free agency, the kind of guys we went out and got were the guys that I think played with the identity that we wanted our team to have. And he talked about DeMarco Murray, which was a steal. And he talked about Ben Jones in free agency. Again, the guy that was such a great team player that Vrabel couldn't stop bawling his tears over. I am not here to tell you that Robinson didn't whiff on first rounders like Isaiah Wilson. I thought the Caleb Farley thing was him taking a crack pipe to the draft board. And the AJ thing I understood at the time, but holy crap, that's been a disaster. But outside of that, that doesn't just wash away all of the winning. Again, as a general manager, that guy won 61% of his games. And you guys just act like, oh, who gives a shit? And it's like, dude, your team has been awful since the second that man has left. Just awful. This guy was 66, and it says 48. 5 of those losses in 2022 were not his. So he was, in my opinion, 66-43 as a general manager. Dude, you won 3 games last year. And so if Robinson won't toot his own horn, I will. And obviously he and I get along because he wouldn't have come on the show if we didn't get along. But it wasn't like when he was general manager, it wasn't like we had a buddy-buddy relationship because we didn't. If we saw each other in public, we'd talk for a say, hey, how you doing? One time we ran into each other at a CMA awards party and he asked me a question because I guess I had asked Vrabel kind of a nuclear question a couple of weeks before. And he asked me, he was like, hey, in the press conferences, were you trying to be like Kaharski? And I was like, fuck that. I am not trying to be Paul Kaharski. But it wasn't like a buddy-buddy relationship. I mean, again, like we had each other's phone numbers and we had a need to discuss relationship. As in, hey, I'm hearing this rumor and I may say it on the air. Is it true? And he'd shoot you straight. Unlike the other guy that replaced him that would sleep on the plane and wouldn't call you back. Also, Rand would sleep in his office. I guess he was just always asleep. So, again, I thought it was a very polarizing discussion. The YouTube chat, again, the response I got from people, they said they loved it. Twitter was like, hey, sucks. Why do we care what Jon Robinson thinks? Again, let me ask this question. Since Jon Robinson has left, and I'm doing this math right off the top of my head here, 0-5, 6-11, which means 6-16, 3-14. So that's 9 plus, what are we at? 16 plus 14, that's 30. 9-32. 9-32 since Jon Robinson was fired. And you guys really think he sucks that bad? It's been basically 3 seasons since he's been fired. You've won as many games as he won in his first season. So quit talking shit. Because the guy clearly knows ball. Was he perfect as a general manager? No, he wasn't perfect. Nobody is. Bill Polian will say the best of the best, the gold jacket guys, hit at 55% in the draft. But this franchise has never had a gold jacket Hall of Famer as the Titans. They have never had a gold jacket Hall of Famer who was primarily a Tennessee Titan. They just haven't. Eddie George and Steve McNair will not make the Hall of Fame. Neither will Derek Mason, even though if you look at D. Mason's numbers, I mean, they are legit. Those guys will not make the Hall of Fame. Bruce Matthews was more of an Oiler. And then guys like Kevin Mawai, yeah, they're in the Hall of Fame, but they did that elsewhere. Derrick Henry is going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Who drafted him? Okay, 6-pack picks. We wrap up the week making our big picks of the week. And last week, not as good as our first week. Our first week, we were 5-1. Yay! Last week, 3-3. I do want to say, just if I can get this off my chest for a second, if ESPN and Fox are going to ruin college football and essentially nuke the Pac-12, and if they're going to do all of that, can we at least, get one legitimately interesting game this weekend? I mean, like when we're making the schedule, and I know it's the conferences that make the schedule, but ESPN tells the SEC what to do because they pay them, and Fox tells the Big Ten what to do. And like, could we get an Ohio State, Oregon this week? Could we get a good game this week? Like last week, Tennessee, Georgia. Great. That's a great game. Can we get something? Because it's like this week is College Game Day is at 1-2 Florida visiting Miami. Ugh. And so it was not as much fun as it usually is to pick these games, but let's do it. Again, last week we were 3-3. We nailed the Tennessee game as well as the Titans. And we also got New England over Miami. However, we lost Vanderbilt. Very impressed by how Vanderbilt played. We lost the Vanderbilt game. We lost Kansas City. I thought they were going to beat the Eagles and Houston on Monday Night Football. So with that, we get right to it, right at the top. College football this weekend, game number 1. This is probably the best game on the docket. Auburn, number 22 in the country. They're on the road at Oklahoma, number 11. Oklahoma is a 7.5-point favorite. That game 2:30 tomorrow Central Time on ABC. And I am taking Oklahoma and kind of a blowout, 31-14. I think it'll be close for about a half. And then I think Oklahoma, who is legitimately good, is going to blow out Auburn, who I think is fugazi. I think Auburn has beaten some Sisters of the Poor. And so because they're a name brand, they're ranked 22 in the country. I don't think they're very good. I think Oklahoma blows them out. Give me the Sooners, Boomer Sooner, 31-14. Meanwhile, the College Game Day game. Florida at Miami. Billy Napier is on death row. 6:30 ABC. Miami, I think, deals the death blow to Billy Napier. Miami wins 41-10, so I'll lay the 9.5, although that is a big number. And let me just say this. I think this is it. I think that on Sunday morning, Billy Napier fired as the head coach at Florida. And while I wouldn't hire Jon Gruden to be the head coach, I think there's a legitimate chance Jon Gruden gets the Florida job. Because he's got a big name in Florida. He lives in Florida. He coached and won a Super Bowl at Tampa Bay. So he's got the Florida ties. But I also think it's kind of because there's a lack of who else is out there. What's a big, sexy name? Who's a young, up-and-coming coach? Maybe Alex Golish that they could hire out of USF? Maybe. But I think Gruden's got a legitimate shot. And they're probably thinking, if we hire Gruden, we'll get NIL money, and we'll get more people that will be interested in donating NIL money than if we hire Will Stein to be the head coach, the OC at Oregon, who is my buddy, who I think is going to be a head coach next year, and I think is a very good coach, and I'd hire before I'd hire Gruden. But I am thinking that on Monday, Billy Napier will be out of a job. I'll go Miami 41-10. Okay, to the NFL. And I think the best game, or at least in my opinion, the best game is at noon on Fox. The LA Rams go on the road to take on Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a 3.5-point favorite. Give me the Rams. And give me the Rams to win outright. I'm going to go LA 30-24. I think LA gave Philadelphia all they could handle in the playoffs last year. I think LA is legit. And I think last week, LA came in here and they worked out a lot of kinks, which is why I believe Stafford was throwing the ball a lot to Devontae Adams, because he knows, hey, if they take away Puka, I go to Devontae. If they take away Devontae, I go to Puka. And so we'll see if the Eagles pass rush. Josh Sweat's not there anymore. Milton Williams isn't there anymore. Now, they still have Jalen Carter, but we'll see if the Eagles pass rush can get to Stafford. I'm taking the Rams. Again, Vegas gives you 3 points for home field advantage. This game's in Philadelphia. I'm going to take the Rams. And I'm going to say this. I think the Rams are going to win outright. Give me the Rams 30-24. Okay. Noon on CBS. Mike Vrabel, the great Mike Vrabel, and the New England Patriots hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are 1.5-point favorites. That game is at noon again on CBS. I find this game to be fascinating. Vrabel, former Steeler. I don't think Vrabel has ever beaten the Steelers. And I was thinking that when I was making this prediction, and I was like, wait a minute. Did Vrabel ever beat the Steelers? And I remember the time that they played the COVID year and got their rear end spanked and then came all the way back and missed a field goal and lost. And then I thought about the next year when they went on the road. Pittsburgh wasn't very good, and Racy McMath and somebody else, Deontay Foreman, fumbled the game away, and Nick Westbrook-Akine didn't run all the way to the sticks on fourth down, and they lost that game. And I'm like, and then there was the Thursday nighter with Will Levis. I'm like, Mike Vrabel, the great Mike Vrabel, I don't think has ever beaten Mike Tomlin. And I don't think that's going to change. I don't think this New England team's very good. They barely beat the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins fucking stink. So, Pittsburgh, 1.5-point favorites on the road at New England. Give me Pittsburgh 18-16. So, Pittsburgh's going to cover. It's going to be ugly. Because that's, I think, how Pittsburgh's kind of doing business, how they've always kind of done it. Since Ben and Bell and Brown and those guys have left, it's going to be ugly. Pittsburgh 18, New England 16. The great Mike Vrabel loses again. The best game, if it's not the Rams and the Eagles, the best game by far, in my opinion, this weekend. And I was surprised Rams-Eagles didn't get better, a better billing, but it's because the Cowboys are playing the Bears. So that's kind of the big game. But the one that I think's got some nice little juice to it, the Monday Nighter. Detroit and Baltimore. That game in Baltimore, 7:20, ABC, ESPN. Give me the Ravens. I feel as if the Lions, I'm not going to say they're in a rebuilding year, and I'm not going to say that they're not going to make the playoffs, but I feel like their championship contention window is over. I mean, and I mean this with all due respect. I think that with the coordinators gone, there's going to be some kind of feeling everybody out, trying to figure out what's next. And I don't think Dan Campbell is so smart that he can absorb losing both coordinators. I'll take the Ravens, who I feel like they've kind of got it rolling. I'll go Baltimore 28-21. The Ravens 4.5-point favorites at home. I'll lay the 4.5. Again, Baltimore 28, Detroit 21 on Monday Night Football. And by the way, that's a good Monday night game. You know, I mean, I got excited last week for the Tampa Bay-Houston game. That game lived up to the billing. Detroit-Baltimore, that is a pretty good Monday Night Football game to get excited about. And finally, our game of the week, noon, CBS, Tennessee, Indianapolis. Indianapolis, 4.5-point favorites on the road here at Nissan Stadium. I am taking the Titans. So I will take the 4.5, and I will take Tennessee 22-21. I don't know how they'll do it. I think this is going to be one of those weird and funky games. I think there's going to be a superstar cam play in there. I think there's going to be a lot of, oh my God, yes, and also, oh my God, no's out of the Titans this week. But I think they find a way. I think this group's got too much pride to just bend over and take it the way that they took it last year to Malik Willis and Green Bay in week 3 and essentially ended their season. I'm taking the Titans. This is the first time I think I've ever taken the Titans or said that, hey, what they're going to do is good in a long, long time. Tennessee 22, Indianapolis 21. That's going to do it for us. A reminder, post-game live as soon as Titans and Colts are over. In fact, I kind of want to go to the game Sunday, but I don't know how I'm going to go to the game and do post-game live. So the one thing I promise, if I figure it out between now and Sunday, then I'll go to the game and then I'll do post-game live. But as of now, the one thing that is certain, post-game live, as soon as Titans-Colts over, right here on the YouTube page, on the Stillman & Company YouTube page. Like and subscribe. Of course, Titans Monday at 2 o'clock. And of course, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, we're all there. So go check it out. Again, like and subscribe. Stillman & Company. Have a great weekend. See everybody Sunday after the game.